Right now, inside your body, something is happening that your cardiologist has a very specific name for. They call it sympathetic overdrive. And if you have ever been prescribed Metoprolol, it means your heart is already caught in this cycle. But here is what almost never gets explained in that rushed 5-minute appointment. There are 5 foods that operate on the exact same biological pathway as those prescription pills. No pharmacy visit required. No side effects quietly destroying your focus at work, your relationship at home, or your sense of who you actually are. I am Dr. Joseph, and today I am going to walk you through exactly how this works. Starting with the biological mechanism most cardiologists never fully explain, and ending with a practical protocol you can begin implementing this week. Now, before we go any further, let me be direct about something most people get completely wrong about high blood pressure. They think the problem is simple. The number on the cuff is high. Take a pill. Bring the number down. Problem solved. That is not entirely wrong, but it is dangerously incomplete, because that number on the blood pressure cuff is not the disease. It is the symptom. It is the fever, not the infection underneath it. The real problem is your sympathetic nervous system running in permanent overdrive. Your autonomic nervous system operates in 2 distinct modes. The first is sympathetic activation, what you know is fight or flight. Your heart rate climbs, your blood vessels constrict, adrenaline and noradrenaline flood your body, and every system prepares for a threat. The second mode is parasympathetic activation, rest and repair. Heart rate slows, blood vessels relax, digestion functions properly, and your immune system recovers. This is the mode where actual healing takes place. For millions of men over 45, the sympathetic system is stuck permanently in the on position. Not because there is any real threat in the room, but because chronic stress, disrupted sleep, inflammatory food choices, and years of sedentary patterns have essentially jammed the switch. Picture a car engine running at 4,000 RPM while sitting in a parking lot. The engine is not broken, but it is burning fuel it should not be burning, generating heat it should not be generating, and wearing down components designed to last for decades. Your heart is doing exactly that, every single day, while you feel no dramatic warning signs and assume things are basically fine. This is where pharmaceutical beta blockers enter the picture. Drugs like Metoprolol, atenolol, bisoprolol, and Cardiology work by blocking the beta-adrenergic receptors in your heart and blood vessels. When adrenaline is released, it normally binds to these receptors and drives up both heart rate and the force of each contraction. Beta blockers sit in those receptor sites like a plug in a socket, preventing the adrenaline signal from completing its path. Heart rate drops, blood pressure falls. The numbers on paper look better. But here is what that model never actually addresses. The sympathetic overdrive is still running underneath. Your nervous system is still revving at 4,000 RPM. You have simply disconnected the dashboard warning light while the engine continues running hot, and your biology fights back. It detects that the receptors are not responding normally, so it manufactures more of them and makes those receptors increasingly sensitive. You become dependent, not psychologically, but biologically. You now need the medication, not just to manage the original problem, but to prevent your own compensatory biology from triggering a dangerous rebound if the drug is ever removed. I want to tell you about a patient I will call Robert. He was 53 years old, a project manager with a solid career, 24 years of marriage, and 3 kids finishing college. His doctor placed him on Metoprolol 2 years before he came to see me after his blood pressure hit 150 overnight. Standard protocol. The numbers came down. His cardiologist was satisfied, but Robert was silently falling apart. When he sat across from me, he described something I've heard from hundreds of men on beta blockers. He said, "Dr. Joseph, I feel like I am watching my own life through a glass window. I am present, but I am not really there." That is beta blocker-induced cognitive impairment. Beta receptors are not only in your heart, they are distributed throughout your brain. When you block them systemically, you slow neural signaling, reduce blood flow to the brain, and interfere with the systems responsible for memory, focus, and executive function. Robert was forgetting critical project details, making errors he had not made in 2 decades of managing complex construction sites. His supervisor eventually placed him on a formal performance improvement plan. The chronic fatigue arrived around month 3. He described waking up already exhausted before his feet touched the floor. That is because beta blockers reduce cardiac output. Less blood moving efficiently through the body means less oxygen reaching your muscles and your brain. The fatigue is not weakness. It is your cardiovascular system operating below its design capacity and your body registering that deficit every single morning. And then his marriage began fracturing. His wife had noticed a change in him months before. When she finally named it, that conversation nearly ended 24 years together. By the time Robert came to me, he had already decided on his own to stop the medication. That decision almost sent him to the emergency room. And this is the single most critical point in everything I am sharing with you today. You cannot stop beta blockers suddenly. You cannot. Robert cut his dose in half without informing his cardiologist. Within 72 hours, his resting heart rate shot to 120 beats per minute, and his blood pressure spiked to 170/105, higher than it had ever been before any medication. He drove himself to the emergency room with chest pressure and cold sweat. This is rebound tachycardia and rebound hypertension. It is documented, predictable, and it can be lethal. So here is what I told Robert when he came to see me the following morning. You cannot stop the medication today, but you can build the physiological conditions that make it unnecessary over time. And that system lives in 5 specific foods. The first is raw celery. Celery contains a compound called thron-butylphthalate, which relaxes the smooth muscle lining your blood vessels, allowing them to widen. When vascular resistance drops, your heart does not have to work nearly as hard. Research published in the Journal of Medicinal Food showed this compound can reduce systolic blood pressure by up to 12% over 4 weeks. 4 stalks daily, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening, always raw. Heat destroys the active compound almost entirely. The second is fatty fish, specifically salmon, mackerel, and sardine. The long-chain omega-3 fatty acids they contain reduce inflammatory signaling that chronically elevates sympathetic tone, and they directly influence the pacemaker cells that set your heart's baseline rhythm. Research from the American Heart Association found consistent omega-3 consumption lowers resting heart rate by 4 to 6 beats per minute. That is pharmacological territory reached through food alone. 3 to 4 servings weekly, baked or grilled, never fried. The third is beets. Beets contain some of the highest concentrations of dietary nitrates found in any food. Your body converts those nitrates into nitric oxide, which signals blood vessels to relax and expand. A meta-analysis of 12 randomized controlled trials found regular beet consumption reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 4.4 millimeters of mercury. 1 medium beet daily, consumed between 6 and 8 in the evening, times the peak nitric oxide effect, with your body's natural shift toward rest. The fourth is garlic, but preparation is everything. When you crush a clove, an enzyme called alinase begins converting the precursor compound into active allicin. That enzyme is destroyed by heat. If you drop freshly chopped garlic directly into a hot pan, you eliminate most of the therapeutic benefit before it ever forms. The 10-minute rule changes the outcome entirely. Crush 1 to 2 cloves. Leave them on the cutting board for exactly 10 minutes at room temperature. Then cook or consume. That single adjustment doubles or triples the cardiovascular value of every clove. The fifth is dark chocolate at 85% cocoa content or higher. The flavonols it contains trigger nitric oxide production in your vascular lining and measurably reduce cortisol, your primary stress hormone. Lower cortisol means lower sympathetic activation. Research from Harvard Medical School found daily consumption of dark chocolate was associated with significantly lower blood pressure and reduced arterial stiffness in men over 40 across 8 weeks of consistent use. 30 grams daily, taken between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, works with the natural decline of your cortisol curve rather than against it. Robert followed this protocol alongside a medically supervised medication taper coordinated with his cardiologist. By week 4, his blood pressure was consistently at 120/80. His cardiologist, reviewing 4 weeks of logs Robert brought to the appointment, agreed to reduce the dose by 25%. By month 3, he was at half his original dose, with cognitive function restored and energy returning throughout the full day. By month 6, he was off medication, entirely under full medical supervision. Last spring, Robert sent me a message. His supervisor had pulled him aside again, not for another performance review, to offer him a promotion. Your biology did not arrive at this point overnight. It built through years of accumulated signals, and it will recalibrate through better ones. But you can start giving those signals today.